So now that we know how to set up the Panda 3D engine, we know how to use Blender at a proficient level, and we have familiarized ourselves sufficiently with the Panda 3D engine, we can go ahead and build our first demo, which is actually a pretty practical demo that could have real-world implications if you took it far enough. What are the core ideas here that we need to think about when we're going to simulate and program a representation of a real-world intersection? Well, we need to simulate 4 double lanes as deeply as our computer or our time allows. And I did actually build this simulation in a week. It's about 4 or 5 days of working on it on and off. And what do we want to eventually do with our simulation? Well, we want to gather some data on how real-world intersections work. We want to learn things like the vehicle throughput, or the number of accidents per mile. And then we want to combine that data with what we're seeing from our simulation. And we're going to compare different ways of making these roads in our simulation. And obviously this has a huge advantage over real-world prototyping because it's incredibly expensive to build real-world intersections. So if we just have a way that we can, in sort of a coarse-grained way, simulate different intersection designs in our computer, then we can make more informed guesses about how real-world intersections will actually play out. So what are the core programming requirements? Well, we need some intersection 3D models, including roads, traffic lights, medians, signs, and infrastructure features. We need some vehicle 3D models, including a realistic pattern of vehicles based in the real world. And I did not have enough time to create different vehicle models in the course of 5 days, but I did implement a straightforward way of replacing the vehicle bodies. So you can just, or I can just set up new bodies as I make them. We're going to need some collision modeling of the vehicles with the road environment, with physics which closely enough match real-world conditions. And you can go pretty deep on this, of course, just like any decent racing sim would do, simulating the friction of the road under various conditions, simulating the tires of the different vehicles under different conditions. And then we're going to need some AI, which is a overblown word for what's really going on in a simulation like this. It's really just a bunch of if statements with 3D location awareness, which accelerate, stop, and avoid other cars to at least loosely simulate real-world drivers. So what's going on here exactly? Well, every 15 seconds, which is the simulation time slice, these vehicles are reset to a specific position and orientation, and otherwise they're trying to follow a preset routine which is programmed in the same way that the stoplights are, except that the trucks have automatic collision boundaries. And they will attempt to continue their programmed path even if their path is disrupted. And this is my attempt to make a robust and general solution for a four-road junction with slip lanes as an attempt to simulate an intersection in the most basic yet illuminating way, so that we might be able to do math on, different types of intersection design and see how much throughput, for instance, we can get through the junction. And as you can see, the stoplights and the traffic signals in general do switch based upon where the simulation time step is at. You can see it just turned red there, and this light just turned green. And I can flip my vehicle back over. The NPC vehicles cannot. Well, I would like to go through every line of this 3,000 line intersection simulation program. It's just not realistic for me to go through every line of a 3,000 line program. But a good bulk of this program is actually this vehicle instantiation definition, which is called for each of the 18 vehicles. And this is a templated way of setting up a vehicle that is actually capable of being totally customized. So we have lots of different variables here, like the suspension travel, the wheel radius, the wheel direction, if it's a front wheel or a back wheel, the chassis connection point, and so forth, to your heart's content inside of the physics environment. And then we have some geometry loaded onto these collision objects that we instantiate with the simulated vehicle. And the model for each of these vehicles can actually be changed out by changing this GLTF file right here. And we're actually finding the windows just like we did in the interactive door program by searching around in the Blender file, or the GLTF file, and actually finding the node called, or the Blender model part called Windows, and then setting the transparency attribute there. In order to get our top-down view of the intersection in the corner, as you probably noticed, we actually set up a different display region, and this is my own boilerplate way of doing that. So this is the player's vehicle, which is not called an undefinition, it's just called right here in the main body. Here's our vehicle handler, just a normal key map. And the NPC state handlers are actually using these two groups of engine force, brake force, and steering increments. And then there's actually a custom class, or rather just a custom set of declarations for the slip lane drivers that control their turning AI. And then these declarations are used to actually set the NPC steering, engine, and brake force increments for each of the 18 vehicles. And the slip lane drivers get the special slip steer increment values so that their group settings are consistent.